Genesis Alpha 1 hopes to combine different gameplay elements into one experience. In Genesis Alpha 1, your objective is to essentially find a new planet to settle on. Story isn't really the main focus of the game. It is there to provide context to the action at hand and set up your mission. The beginning cutscene does a decent job of this.
Our old dream became a global necessity. We needed resources. We needed more space and more food. We needed a perspective. After years of digging in the dust of Mars, the inventors gave us wings. The hyperdrive. Our ticket to not only Venus or Jupiter, but to Messier, to Andromeda, and to a galaxy we call Alpha 1. A galaxy full of bright suns and beautiful planets. A galaxy full of life.
At first glance, I thought this game was going to have many elements moving together to make an experience that has a long learning curve to it. And while there are definitely things to learn and discover about the game, the beginning hours presents you with a well-done tutorial that welcomes you to the game rather than just throwing you into it. I completely appreciate games that expect you to figure them out on your own. As with the good ones that use this model, it allows for some nice moments of victory and satisfaction. With Genesis Alpha 1, I think in an effort to have a wider appeal, the way they introduced the game was a good one here. I normally do not like having mandatory tutorials within my games, as in many cases they can drag down the initial hours and it can be frustrating for the player that just wishes to skip them. But that isn't the case here. I rather enjoy the tutorial. The tutorial breaks down the different factors that you need to pay attention to, along with showing you how the shipbuilding works. The tutorial does provide a good introduction and an interesting hook to the game. The game breaks down into two parts. You have the first-person gameplay and the shipbuilding. You start out each run with a ship. You have a few supplies and you will need to use those supplies to make different additions to your ship. You will need to build additions to maintain breathable air, stations to store refined and raw materials for future upgrades, a weapon station, and a lot more. You will use a tractor beam as a means to grab materials for your ship. You can manually grab supplies for you, or you can assign crew members to complete this task for you. A neat aspect of grabbing supplies from space is how enemies might get attached to the debris that you decide to bring aboard, and then you'll have some foes to contend with within the tractor beam room. This is where the tutorial suggests to ensure you have some form of defense placed there to protect your crew. Another means to collect supplies are when you can go on away missions. Here you will select one of the planets within the area and you can take a transport from your ship to the surface of the planet. Here you will have a small area that you can run about and collect supplies along with finding other artifacts and upgrades. Mining can take some time and you will not be alone while you're on the planet. You will usually need to contend with some forms of hostile life while you're there. And these enemies will continue to spawn in to try and take you out. Thankfully, if you are close enough to your transport, you can rely on the transport's large gun to be able to take them out for you, leaving you to be able to clean up any of the rest of the enemies. While also on the planets, you will need to grab the aforementioned artifacts. These provide you with ship upgrades, new items, upgrades for your suit, and sometimes they will provide you with locations for other upgrades so that you know where to explore. This creates a cycle of you collecting new supplies to upgrade your ship. You will find other rooms and attachments you can set up on the ship as well. Some will even help you to combat diseases that you might encounter on your journey. You can also build a clone area, and this is how you're going to create more crew members. Crew members have a few functions. You can assign them to the many different functional rooms throughout the ship, and they will cause those functions to be able to work more efficiently. Along with that, the clones essentially act as lives for your playthrough. If you die, then you will assume the role of another clone. As long as you still have clones, your playthrough will not end. I think the ship aspect is one of the best parts about the experience. It adds a layer of strategy to it, along with providing you with a place that you can call your own and personalize a bit in how you choose to build it. The other cool part about this is how you'll be able to explore the ship that you are actually building. You can walk into all the areas you build, and in some cases go through the vents of those rooms. And in some cases, the game may call you to service those areas if an enemy boards your ship and attacks a specific room. Another factor of the experience is the combat.
Life form detected. Life form detected. Life form detected.
Like I said before, when you are gathering materials and useful items on your away missions, you will be attacked by a variety of enemies. The enemies come in different forms and use different attacks against you. Thankfully, you have a variety of guns to use against them. The gun combat is definitely an area that I would like to see more improvement in. Moving within the ship and combat feels a little fast, but mostly normal. The aiming seems a bit off at times and not as precise or as tight as you would want it. What really hurts the gun combat is the impact of it. The guns themselves lacked any sort of punch to them. When I fired my shotgun, it felt like I was using a toy gun, rather than something that could really cause a lot of damage. It makes using these guns less engaging than it should be. Another thing that hurt the combat is the enemy AI. They either stand in one place and in some instances will not react to you, or they will continually charge at you. This would be fine if the weapons were interesting and fun to use, but both of these flaws paired together really hurts the instances of combat throughout the game. Combat does allow you to gain new upgrades through defeating enemies, as they drop DNA for you to pick up that can be used to then create new clones or newer and better weapons. Upgrading and building areas of the ship is what's most enjoyable. Within my first run, I lost my ship because I was boarded by some unfriendly aliens.
Access screen detected. Detected. Life form detected.
I really like that they included this in the game. It was one of the most memorable parts about my experience. It felt personal as I made this ship and I was trying to defeat these overwhelming forces. I was completely outgunned. My other crew members were dying and I was trying to save the ship, but in the end, I ended up dying. What is nice is when you die, some of the upgrades that you made throughout the game will be an option to include for you when you start up a new run. So you never really walk away with nothing. I do want to clarify that I played this game for several hours, but I never beat it. The repetitive nature of gathering supplies really hurt the experience. When the tutorial introduces you to the nature of the away missions, I found it really interesting. But after a few of them, you realize that each away mission pretty much plays out the same way and looks about the same way. You can scan the planet before you go down to it so you know what materials are there and if there are any artifacts to look out for. When you arrive to the planet, most of the materials are located near your transport, so you really don't need to go too far to get them. Along with that, to be able to grab all the artifacts, you're just going to be able to need to take about one loop around the whole map to grab them. This kills the sense of excitement and exploration that I should be feeling from something like this. I think the developer should have tried to create different types of away missions and variety to how they look. Some can be like these dungeons that would need to be explored, and you may need to go into a dark cave and only rely on your flashlight to be able to see. Maybe you get a distress call and need to rescue somebody, and that could be how you add new crew members to your ship. Or encounter a few distress call missions and then on the fifth one subvert that expectation by making it a trap. The purpose of the game is to find a new home, so I think that should extend to the gameplay and how I feel like I want to explore new areas. I understand that this stuff may not be able to be done on a grand scale because this isn't a AAA game but rather an indie product. but this part of the game definitely needed more variety. Conceptually, I think this game is awesome. Having a game where you need to manage your ship that you are also contributing to and building is a great way for the player to feel personally involved with the gameplay. The execution of this concept as of right now is decent, but I also think it still needs a lot of work to really be that compelling experience I know this concept can be. The initial hours will probably hook you and excite you to what else could be out there for the rest of the game, but as you continue to explore what the game has to offer, you'll find yourself losing interest in the experience. Like I said before, I didn't beat the game, so maybe there's more interesting stuff out there that happens later on, which is neat, but if it's true, I wish they made a better effort to spread out that throughout the entire game before someone would get tired of the presented gameplay loop. As the game currently stands, I cannot recommend it unless you are really interested in trying it out. The performance was mostly good on the PS4 with a few crashes, though I will say that you should keep an eye out for the title and pay attention to any updates the developers make to this game. I think there's some good stuff here, but they also need to add more to make it an experience I can recommend to people. Thank you very much for watching.